Welcome back. Today's video is about the cybersecure license plate reader, or LPR camera for short. We're going to go through the basics of the operation, setup, as well as some examples of use. The first thing that we want to do is we want to log into the camera. As you can see here, we've got our browser window open so we can access the settings of these cameras. We're not going to use the browser to view them. We're just going to use the browser to set them up. So we go to the IP address here at the top, and then it's going to have us go and log into this device. This is our license plate reader camera. If you're not sure what your default password is, it's 123456, and then you'll have the opportunity to set your own. Here we're at the main view window for this camera. This is showing us a live picture of the way we have the camera currently positioned. As you can see here, we've got it zoomed in on a set targeted area that we know plates are going to pass through. With this camera, it's dedicated to reading license plates, so it needs to be zoomed in 100%. On the area that you're trying to read the plates. Your goal with this camera is to make the plate as large as possible in the camera screen here. The first thing that we want to do, if we go to the setup menu here, under video and video encoding, we want to tell the camera to operate at 60 frames a second. Those added frames are real beneficial to reading license plates. So by default, it's going to be set to 1920 by 1080 at 30 frames a second. We're just going to bump that up to 60 frames a second. Now the trade-off to that is we just want to do the mainstream. You know, there's no reason to view this camera from a cell phone, right? This camera is just going to be dedicated to compiling plate information. So it's not, you know, going to generate a lot of oohs and ahs on the live view. But its data collection is where it really shines. And then we just want to give it something better than 1024 for the bit rate. Depending on how many cameras you have, what your network looks like, it could be anywhere from 2048 all the way to 8192. You know, those would all be acceptable. If you set it to 8192 and you're noticing the video kind of stops and stutters a little bit, then you might want to come back and lower that. This is, you know, a big variable, depends on the network and how much available bandwidth you have there. But ideally, you would want to get that as close to 8192 as you can. 4096 was just fine for our purposes, though. Okay. And then once you have that set up, there are some image settings that you can adjust on the camera. Brightness, you know, all the standard stuff. And then we also want to make sure we've got an exposure mode. So we've got a lot of different options here for exposure. This camera really excels at license plates, and in order to capture plates when the vehicle is moving, a high level of customization for the shutter is required. So we've got some shutter presets, you know, low motion blur, you know, that would be if the vehicle is moving too fast. Manual, that just lets you set your shutter speed from anything here in the list. We've also got indoor at 60 hertz, indoor at 50 hertz if you're using it in a PAL region, iris priority, shutter priority. And then you've got automatic, custom. Custom will let you do a very, very exact shutter speed adjustment that you can do on this. For 9 out of 10 purposes, automatic will do just fine. The camera is very intelligent, so it will automatically adjust its shutter speed based off the plate coming in. You've also got some day-night modes, wide dynamic range, which would be great. The camera itself doesn't have any infrared capabilities. That would be counter-conducive to reading license plates. So because of that, it's got wide dynamic range, and you'll need some ambient light, you know, depending on the level of darkness. But the camera will use the tail lights and the license plate lights themselves. So even in total darkness or, you know, snow, for example, it'll still be able to show a very good nighttime image and capture plates as they drive through. Okay, coming back to the live view, we can get to all the settings we need to from here. If we go to Setup Wizard, this is the screen it takes you to, and this is where we customize our detection range. We want to trigger by video And what we want to do is we want to draw a box around the area that the plates are going to most often drive through. You can configure your box as the whole screen, but the system is going to work a lot better if you target a specific area at the camera's maximum zoom level. If you do a wide area, it's just going to increase the potential for false alerts or bad reads. A targeted area is just going to give you much more streamlined results, much more dedicated results, and that's the way to go with this type of camera. So we've got our box here. We can click on the corners and we can move it. Or if we want, we can get the little cross and then we can customize it. So you can do an oblong shape, you can do something that's going to be symmetric, you can do a rectangle, you can do a square. So there's a lot of different options here. You just want to put that box over the targeted area that you're trying to read those plates in. Now that we're out of the setup wizard, if we go to advanced, there'll be some additional options here. We've got vehicle detection sensitivity. The higher the number, the more sensitive it's going to be. So again, you might get false alerts if there's a lot of information on the vehicle, company names, vinyl wraps, it might read those in addition to the plate. So that's something you can adjust as the reads come in. If you're getting too many reads and not the ones that you need, you can lower that sensitivity. If you're not getting the ones that you need and you're not getting a lot of them, then you can increase the sensitivity. So it's just like a motion detector. The higher the sensitivity, the more reads it's going to get. Interfering character filter, you would turn this on if you're getting plates that have decorations, borders sometimes, or, you know, in the state of Utah, sometimes they replace the little skiing guy with a vinyl sticker of a snowboard guy. And those can cause malfunctions in the reader as well. Simply turning that on will then filter those out and give you a more accurate read on those numbers and letters as they come in. Multi-plate vehicle, exactly what it sounds like. Some vehicles have license plates as well as other identifying plates on them. You know, if you're running a big depot or some sort of motor pool, then that might be particularly useful for you. Same plate output means that it will do duplicate plates. So if a car were to drive laps around your detector, it would read that plate every single time. If you have that turned off, then it will just grab the first one and then recognize that the plate's already in the system, and then it won't bring up any more new reads for that plate. Okay, and then the rest of these options, these are time intervals or frame intervals for how often it grabs a plate. So same plate output intervals would be, for example, if a vehicle was parked, not driving around, but parked, right? The system will wait 300 seconds in between each plate read. So even if it's parked, you'll get, you know, additional reads of that plate because the camera's detecting a plate there, but it's just going to separate them so that you don't get a read every 5 frames or 10 frames the way they designed it by default. Minimum interval for unlicensed vehicle recognition frame. So that means that 50 frames have to go by without a read before the system is told that it's an unrecognizable or an unlicensed vehicle. It does 60 frames a second, and it's going to spend 50 of those determining where the plate is, what the plate is, and if it has a plate. So you can increase that. If you're seeing vehicles go through and it's not grabbing plates, it could be that it needs additional frames to then capture those plates. But the default value from what we tested worked great all the time. Minimum count for recognizing as unlicensed is the same as the option before it, except this is 6 seconds as opposed to 50 frames. So it might be easier to use seconds versus frames, but they essentially would do the same thing. It'll wait 6 seconds, and if it can't pull a plate, it's going to count it as an unlicensed or unrecognized vehicle. Minimum plate recognition and maximum plate recognition. This is basically the minimum size of a plate and the maximum size of a plate. Now these options don't go very high, which is why the camera needs to be zoomed in all the way. But you want to set 100 pixels as the minimum and 300 as the maximum. That's going to be the sweet spot. If we do a larger read or larger maximum plate, then it'll read more of the business logos, and vinyl wraps, and things like that. We want to make sure that the plate stays as close to real size as it passes through the frame. And so by zooming it in all the way, 100 minimum, 300 maximum is perfect for reading license plates. For example, if you were using this system someplace where the longer European type license plates are being used, you would have to increase the plate recognition pixel because those plates are physically larger. The letters are larger, they're wider. So that would be used for that type of adjustment. Okay, now that we've got the camera, we've got its IP address, it's on the same network as our NVR, it's got the password put into it, we've specified the detection zone, we've zoomed it in all the way, we've got our sensitivity configured. Now what we want to do is we want to add this to the NVR. The first step is just to add the raw video feed to the NVR as one of its cameras. So what we'll do is we'll go over to our NVR here. We've got our demo NVR set up here. We'll log into it. And the first thing we want to do is we just want to search and add this camera to the NVR just like any other IP camera. There will be additional steps for the license plate function, but step one is just to get it added to the NVR. We'll click camera on the left, and then we'll click the add button here to add our camera. We'll add it by its IP address, and since it's a cybersecure camera with a cybersecure NVR, we'll use that private protocol. So we're just going to type the IP address of the camera in here, port 80, and then we're going to type in the username and password for our LPR camera. Okay, now that the camera is appearing in green on the status indicator, we know that the camera is working. If we go to the live view, we'll then be able to view the live footage from this camera, all zoomed in, same as before. Okay, so now, as far as we've gone, our NVR now has a 60 frame license plate camera added to it. But now we need to set up the database and collection part of it. This is where the real meat and potatoes of the setup is. It's a two-part setup. We're going to go back to the camera first and then come back to the NVR to finish it out. What we want to do is when we're back to the camera, we can go to Setup. Okay, so we click Setup across the top. Then on the left-hand side under System, you'll see an option for Photo Server. This is the first part of what we need. So here what we're going to do is we're going to tell the camera that its server is the NVR, because that's how we want it to be set up. We want the NVR to manage the data and collection of these license plates. So for the server IP address, we're going to type in the IP address of our NVR here. Server port is 5073. Platform communication, we want to use video and image database. For the version, we want to use the 2018 version as opposed to the 2017 version. So LPR ID is, we're just going to call it camera. It's an LPR camera. The ID isn't so much important on the LPR side as it is on the device side. So skipping device ID, we'll come right back to that. We then want to put in the username and password that we log into our NVR with. So this is the username for our NVR, and this is the password for our NVR that we then have to type in twice. Okay, and then once that's in, we just have to set a device ID. The device ID needs to be 20 digits long, and it needs to contain specific characters 0119. So in order to do that, the easiest way, we're going to set our own 20-digit device ID here. Now, if you have multiple LPR cameras, this ID does need to be different, but it would only be different by a factor of 1. So what we're doing is we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then we're going to throw our required 0119 in there. And then we're just going to take it all the way up to 20 characters after that. So that would be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. So that's the 20 character number with 0119 thrown in there after the 10th digit. And so if you had a second camera that you needed to do this with, just change the 0 on the end to a 1. If you've got a third one, you can change it to 2. So you would only need to increase that by a factor of 1 for every unique LPR camera that you have. But in order to make sure that the databases on the cameras and NVR matches up, that is a requirement. Each LPR camera needs to have this 20-digit device ID. Now, if everyone wants to use the same device ID, then that's perfectly fine. This is a database between your camera and your NVR. So it's not reaching out to an external database. It's not going to conflict with another customer who's got that same device ID on their camera. You can feel free to copy mine here, and that's going to be the easiest way to do it. The rest of these we want to leave on their default values. Percentage mode, short connection, go and check all these, and then that's it. We want to save that. And if you'll notice down here in the lower left-hand corner, we've got our photo server 1 that we just put this information in, but it's showing a red status light. We want that to be green. It's not going to be green yet because we still have to configure the NVR, but once we configure the NVR, we're going to come back to this screen and we're going to see if that's green or not, and that's going to be our indicator that everything is configured correctly and the NVR is compiling license plates for you. Back on the NVR side, we've pointed this camera's database to the NVR. Now we need to create that database within the NVR. So from here, we're going to go to Setup across the top, and then Platform on the left-hand side. The first option we see here is the Video and Image Database. And this is a server that's turned off. We want that turned on. The server address is the IP address for your NVR here, the same IP address that your NVR uses. Server port is 5073, just like it was specified here. And then the username and password is the username and password for your NVR. So we'll go ahead and put that in here as well. We want to make sure that we do original and face images being uploaded. And go ahead and save that. And now we've got our video and image database. So now this is telling the system which cameras to apply the database to. We don't want to apply a license plate recognition database to a non-LPR camera because the NVR is going to sit and wait for information that it's never going to get, and it's going to cause issues with the cameras, issues with the recordings. So we've got a local ID here right at the top. We don't need to change that. Your NVR's local ID is fine the way it is. The local port needs to be 5073 as specified previously. Now, if we go back to our camera here, you can see that we've added this license plate camera as D1, channel 1. So when we're on our platform access, we want to make sure that we're working on D1, since that's the channel the license plate reader has been added to. We just want to make sure the device type says license plate recognition and not collection device. For the channel ID here, all we want to do is we want to specify that device ID for the LPR that we created here. You can cut and paste it if that's easier. So we can go right like this, and we'll just hit Control-C and copy that, and then Control-V to paste that. If you use the keyboard shortcuts, you should be able to do that. So as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, required 0119, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. So there's our 20-digit ID that we created for the license plate reader. Once that's in here, we want to save this information, and then they're going to start to talk back and forth. There is an additional level of detail that we can provide on this, right? This would be like meta tagging or almost like a geolocation. You can put this information inside the database for the LPR so that all of this information would then be accessible on the raw feed. So if you backed up a file, you would be able to see location, latitude, longitude, where the camera's located. So there's some advanced stuff you can do with that, or you can do nothing with this. You don't have to do anything with the advanced section here. You can leave all of this blank and it'll still work just fine. So as you can see, the status says it's offline. This isn't going to update on its own in real time. We'll have to refresh the page to update it, or we can come back to the camera, and see now photo server 1 is highlighted in green showing online. So that means that the camera is now set up with the MVR. It's online, it's reading plates as they come through, and it's compiling those plates. So we've got the MVR and the camera communicating. They're both linked up and sharing a database. The question is, what does this actually look like? It's a 1080p 60 frame per second camera, but you can see the video is fully zoomed in. So what we want is to be able to see the plates on our smart pane on the right hand side here. When a vehicle drives by, it's going to show the picture of the vehicle, a picture of the plate, as well as a time and a rough translation of the plate. It's going to try to translate it, but based off the vehicle's rate of speed, you might be a digit or two off there. But the picture is clear enough. We can clearly read U479D1. If you click on that, you'll get a small clip of the vehicle driving by. You'll get some additional information here, which camera, what time it is, as well as the license plate transcription there. The more advanced license plate functions can be found from the main menu under the VCA settings. We've basically got a vehicle control list. And what we can do here is we can add plates to the list. And when we add plates to the list, the system will identify vehicles based off the list. We can make a white list and a black list, and we can trigger recordings. We can trigger alarm relays. Everything the face detect does, this will do here as well. So, a potential example would be you can have a black list with license plates in it, and you can have the MVR hooked up to like a gate or an entryway. And when the vehicle comes in, the camera will scan the plate. If it doesn't match what's on the blacklist, then it'll open the gate and let them through. Or you can simply trigger recordings or alerts to your phone when a plate that matches the blacklist is seen, as well as controlling access through the whitelist and the blacklist. If we go to the search, we can go to vehicle search down here. If you want to search for a specific plate number, you can type that plate number in and search for it. If you want to search by the color of the plate, the color of the vehicle, that camera will compile all that information as well. However, it will not ever be as accurate as the plate number itself. You can choose the camera you want to search for and the time. So if we just do a search for the last 24 hours on our license plate camera, you'll see we've got some vehicles that drove through, as well as some plates right there, 6N06B, 6N06B. If we double click here, we can blow it up and see a better view of the plate itself. And then at the top here, we can back these recordings up. It's possible to then compile and save vehicles coming and going from the location that the camera is watching.